3, 2, 1. Welcome to the David the Dog Trainer Podcast, episode 183.
Hello.
As usual, we're gonna get right into it.
All right.
I'm trying to stay strict with the get right into it. And today's, though I don't listen, it may go long, it may go short. I don't know.
Okay.
But today's, I'm gonna try to eliminate as much of the fluff as I can, because I think people are really gonna get something out of today's. And I think sometimes when I get a little too whatever this is,
you get into it.
Sometimes I get a little too
Start
where I like go all over the place, and then I feel like it takes away from the episode. So I'm going to stop doing that. I'm doing it right now. I'm going to stop doing it.
I don't think it's that bad.
So today's episode is going to be on routines and predictability. And I will kind of get into what I mean about this, obviously, and where it started, right? So we have a trainers meeting generally every 2 weeks where we get all our trainers together. We talk about, whatever. We just kind of, it's our time to chit chat. Sometimes there's things to talk about. Sometimes there's not things to talk about. And somehow we got down the rabbit hole of talking about board and trains, talking about some of our competitors that offer board and trains, and just kind of being like, what the fuck are some people doing? Like when you see these places out there that are offering board and trains and they're like, board and train, 6-week board and train is $20 million and includes 2 free follow-up sessions. And we're like, 2 free? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I have a dog I'm working with today, and I'm starting to get that. I'm starting to do it right now.
No, that's all right.
I'm starting to do it, so I gotta reel myself in a little bit. I got a dog I'm working with today. We're probably on follow-up session number 6. Yeah. And the dog is doing great, but it's like, there's so many little tweaks that need to be made. It's a dangerous dog. It's a new owner. Like we want to build on success. I don't want to overwhelm them with everything all at once. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
So this was further solidified to me as I did follow-up sessions with people over the last week, right? Where I'm just, again, dogs that are doing well, but it's like, a month and a half later, it's like we just kind of check in, see where things are going, fix a problem, whatever. And, past that just being one area where I think everybody that offers a board and train really needs to put a laser, focus on is how much follow-up support they're providing and making sure you're really positioning yourselves to allow your clients to be successful. One consistent thing that, as I was sitting down looking at what am I going to talk about today, I was looking at it like, what's a consistent, what's a consistent trait that I found over these last lessons? What it was routines and predictability, right? So let me walk you guys down what I mean by this, right? So I think with dogs and with owners, 99% of issues that you may run into can be boiled down to having an inconsistent routine, criteria, or absolutely no predictability from the dog's perspective of what you want out of them, right? So I jotted down, like, where are some areas where I personally have created these 100% consistent routines for my dogs to allow them to succeed and to make it as easy as possible for them to succeed and to make it as easy as possible for me to enforce said criteria. And I came up with like 4 of them.
Okay.
Right? I'm sure there's more, but literally I came up with these in the last 5 minutes. So we're going to work with these ones. And as I kind of get through them, if I think of more, I'll elaborate on more of them. Okay.
Sounds good. See, I think you did great there.
There was okay. That was 3 minutes and 59 seconds of an intro. So
see, the thing is though, is like when you talk about stuff, it's always pertaining to the subject, Yes. So
okay. So let's go through these, right?
Sounds
the
good.
places where I have clear routines. The walk. The walk is one. Feeding time for my dogs. That's another one.
Okay.
Guests coming over / how guests interact with my dogs, right? Actually, I just thought of one as I'm talking. Hold on. Socialization with dogs. That's another one. And then the last one, toys / like interactive games that you play with your dog, right? Okay. So if you want to go play fetch with them or play tug with them or whatever it may be. That one is kind of, I put that one on the end because though there are some routines for certain things that I do throughout the game, obviously it's going to change game by game and it's going to change situation by situation. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the others, right? The walk. This is the number one place people have problems with their dogs. And when I work with clients and when those clients tell me I'm having problems on the walk with my dog, a lot of people, from a trainer perspective, their brain goes right to do your heel position, enforce your heel position, do this, do that, right? Like it's the answer is always the same as far as how to work through it. But one thing that I've done over the last couple of years, or really tried to force myself to do more, is try to figure out what the client truly is doing when you're not present. Because I think a lot of clients, what they do is as soon as they go in for their training session, they change it, right? They put on their training cap, they enforce things differently than they normally would, they structure their walk differently than they normally would. And that's why so many times we see that we're not able to replicate the problem and we're not able to give them good enough guidance on how to restructure things at home, right? So I'll use an example of a dog that I was working with, right? We had this dog and been doing follow-up sessions with him. He's doing great in his follow-up sessions. And consistently she would come back and she'd be like, the walk is going really good, but there's, A, B, C, or D issue that I saw this week, right? And every time I'm just kind of like, man, like what? I was having a hard time really wrapping my brain around exactly what was going wrong. So, the session that I went in with this client, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to really get into their head. I'm gonna try to really get them to just like open up and show me exactly what they normally would do at home, right? And there were a couple of things that we were finding. Thing number one, this client was allowing this dog to take potty breaks like every 100 feet, it seemed like. Right? And the client was following the rules, which are she would tell the dog come, the dog would come, and then like she would go 100 feet and then say, okay, and let him go off and pee, right? And then she would say come, and she would enforce to come, and then she'd go another 100 feet and say, okay, and let the dog go off and pee. And it's like the dog wasn't doing anything wrong, like objectively there was nothing wrong about that. Like when in command, she was enforcing the command. When not in command, she was letting the dog do whatever it wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
But because she was doing such frequent breaks, this dog was constantly of the mindset of just like, get ready for the next break, get ready for the next break, get ready for the next break. And because of that, she was like nurturing this state of mind within the dog of basically just like never relax into the expectation and truly become compliant because I'm going to be free again in a minute, right? And the dog's sitting there and you're keeping him in this like elevated level of stress because of that, making him that much more likely to react to a trigger once he saw it, right? So that was one thing that we saw that she was doing. Past that, obviously, as we've historically seen with other people before, they tend to have an inconsistent routine of what they do when they actually see the trigger, right? So this dog's particular trigger is cars, right? Particularly like loud, like if you get one of those cars, it's got the big like fucking like motor off the back, or like a bus or a motorcycle or something like that. He can be very reactive to those, right? So consistent routines, right? So how do we go about fixing this, right? Let's create some predictability to things. This is what I do with my dogs. This is what I do with my clients' dogs. And upon implementing this specific routine done almost to a T, you should have little to no issues with your dog on the walk. So thing number one, I get that some people live in apartments and need to like let their dog go to the bathroom on the walk, obviously. I am by no means anti let your dog go to the bathroom on the walk. But some people get so overboard with it, right? It's like they look at the walk as the place where like, oh my God, well, I know he peed at the beginning of the walk, but it's been 3 minutes and he might need to pee again. It's like, guys, like how many times are you going to the bathroom and you're dating? Like I promise you your dog can hold it. I promise you, right? And by constantly catering to the dog and giving them these potty breaks and thinking, oh my God, he might need to pee. Oh my God, he might need to poop. Oh my God, he might need to sniff that tree for whatever reason, right? you are never allowing them to get into the groove of just being compliant and being comfortable with being compliant. Yeah. So here's my thing. This is kind of the happy medium compromise that I've come up with over time, I think, for my clients. Before I go to take my dogs for a walk, I make sure they completely eliminate and relieve themselves before we ever start the walk. So let's say you have a house that has a backyard. Let your dog into the backyard for 5 minutes before you start the walk, right? And really let them go. Really let them pee on everything, get everything out of their system, confirm that you just went. Unless you're going on like an hour and a half long walk, you should be good for the large bulk of this walk.
Yeah.
Right? So do that, right? If you do not have a fenced-in backyard and or you live in an apartment, as soon as you get out of your front door, have some sort of area that you could have be like their free area where it's basically like a simulated backyard, right? Let them go. Let them sniff around in that area to their heart's desire. Like let them totally get everything out of their system, right? Just check that box past just you then being confident that you could enforce a strict criteria with your dog. If your dog did actually need to go in that moment, they're not going to have to go anymore, which will decrease stress on the walk of like, holy shit, I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right? And you allowing them to have that little burst of like, get a little bit of your energy out of your system before we actually start the walk will make when you go to actually enforce the walk that much easier.
Yeah.
Right? So you're starting off on such a right foot with things. Because consistently I hear clients tell me I start my walk and the first 5 to 10 minutes are messy. The dog's pulling and this and that. Like instead of allowing your dog to do that on the walk and rehearse that, just don't give them the expectation initially. Let them do their thing, right? Then start your walk, right?
Yep.
So do that. From there, enforce your positioning strictly. Enforce it strictly. Whatever your criteria is. If you're somebody that does the heel, enforce your heel strictly. If you do the come or the in the bubble like we do, enforce that nice and strictly and go about your walk. Right? And one more caveat to the going off to go to the bathroom. Another clear routine that I enforce is if I'm going to release my dog to sniff around, I never, ever, ever do it on the sidewalk. I never go like we're walking down the sidewalk and okay, we're going down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I think visual patterns and predictability is so key for dogs. And I think having a lack of a clear visual difference of walking time versus free time can really throw them off. This is something else that the client that I was talking about with the car reactivity was doing as well. Is when they would say, okay, they'd never even changed what they were doing. It was just kind of like, we walk for 100 feet. Okay, walk for 100 feet, come, walk for 100 feet, okay, right? Like it's just really visually confusing for the dog, right? So always release, then go off into an area, right? Okay, so then you start your walk, you go about your walk. Routine number 2 on the walk, when we see triggers. And I personally try to do this with any dog, regardless of their level of reactivity that they may have or not have, right? Okay. Every time we see a trigger, pull off to the side, give yourself as much distance as you feel comfortable with, and then hold the dog to a particular expectation. Sit down, don't care what it is, hold them to a particular expectation, correct firmly for non-compliance of said expectation, and I'll even throw in the caveat of if you want to reward heavily for compliance of said expectation, go ahead and do it in that situation, right? This is one people give me shit on all the time. They're like, oh, well, like these people say that you should never be stationary if your dog is reactive. We've talked about that in past podcasts. I'm not going to get super in depth on that right now. I promise you it's going to be fine. I promise if you're telling me that your dog can't hold a sit in the presence of another dog because they're that reactive, you probably need to work on your dog holding a sit in the presence of another dog because they're that reactive. Right? Don't use that as a goddamn excuse because the dog wants to move, which is why they're being reactive. So making them be stationary is I promise it's going to be okay. Promise it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's such a cop-out.
So consistent, I don't even want to say it's a cop-out. There's nothing, again, this is not what we're intending to talk about. it's not wrong to be in motion. And technically, per the science, is it maybe a little easier for the dog to be in motion? Maybe. But I've said a million times, the reason why I like the stationary command is because, one, the dog should be able to do it. And two, from the human perspective, if you are going to have a criteria that you're holding your dog to, a black and white criteria of the dog either being in the stationary position or not in the stationary position is much easier for you to see and enforce than is the dog in that heel position just right? Or they're walking with you, but are they looking back? It's just a little bit more gray when the dog is in motion, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
Anyways, so do that every single time you see a trigger, whether your dog is going to react or not. And yes, I understand there's going to be circumstances it's not ideal to pull off to the side and do a sit, where it's going to be more ideal to keep walking, but those are fewer and further in between, where if you're enforcing the stationary command 99% of the times you need to just walk by, your dog should be practiced enough with being calm around a trigger where it's not a big issue, right? So let's again, I want to kind of recap from the beginning here. So as soon as you get out your front door, let the dog eliminate and do whatever they want for the first 5 minutes, but don't be walking. Have it just be a designated area. You're letting them do their thing in. Start the walk, enforce your position very strictly, and anytime you see a trigger, pull off to the side, put your dog in a sit or a down, and enforce said position consistently. From there, depending on how long your walk is, if you're just going out 15, 20 minutes, just do that. Go home. At the end of the walk, you can let your dog do the same thing, eliminate, relieve themselves for 5 minutes or so, then take them inside, you're good to go, right? Okay. If you're going out for a long walk, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, somewhere in the middle of the walk, you can give your dog another break. Same deal. Clear visual picture, pick a location, release, go off into a field, something like that. Let your dog sniff around, do whatever they want, obviously. And then once you're ready to start walking again, come, heel, whatever, follow the same procedure going back home. It sounds so stupid. A lot of people are going to listen to this and say, I already do that. But I will push back on and say, if you probably are doing that ish. Right? You're probably doing that ish. Right? So really take my words as literally as possible when I say, go through each step I outlined and ask yourself, are you enforcing that routine exactly how I am recommending? And if you are not, change it, enforce it that way, and I am telling you your walks are going to be so much better. I'm telling you they're going to be so much better. I'm telling you they are going to be so much better.
Oh, yeah.
So that's routine one.
Yeah, I love it.
And listen, like there's extra pieces we could add into the equation, but that's the bare bones of it. The only one I would say that, like, to not get too crazy with, like, here's like a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there. The only thing that I would say is if you have a really energetic dog, on those breaks you're giving them, if you're walking your dog historically on a short leash, and when I say short, I mean like 4 to 6 feet, so like short to standard size leash, for those breaks, bring along a long line or a flexi lead or something so that the dog isn't rehearsing pulling into that leash. Because inevitably, if I have an energetic, like with Vinny, if I were to try to take him out on a 4-foot leash and say like, okay, in a field, he would spring to the end of the leash and fucking like choke himself or yank my arm out. And he's not doing anything wrong, guys. I told him okay. So like in his mind, it's like, boom, I get to go do whatever I want to do. And it's not really fair that I say like, okay, do whatever you want to do, but like stay within, you know, fucking 2 feet from me because you're on this 4-foot leash right now. Like that is going to create more stress as well. Yeah. So for your releases, you could put the dog on a longer leash for that, obviously. That's the only adjustment I will have people make to that.
For sure.
Okay, so that's the walk. That's your routine for that. Enforce it exactly like that.
Yeah.
Does that one make sense?
It all makes sense. One that I would never think about is like what you're talking about with the sidewalk and like when you release, not staying on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I just never even thought about like, oh, that could make a really like confusing picture for the dog.
It's all pictures, right? That is exactly like you just said. That is a confusing picture for the dog because you, the human, are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like we know how easy it is for dogs in their day-to-day to like they go and lay on their bed or on their place board, and then like 5 minutes goes by and they kind of look around like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be here? Yeah. Did you put me here?
Right.
Can I get up? But like,
I know.
Because the picture is the same, right?
Yeah.
Like it's you sitting on your couch, right? And the dog laying on their bed, and they're like, I've seen this picture before. Like I usually am supposed to stay here, right? So we know how easy for shit like that to happen is. So you tell me if the dog is seeing the same picture on the walk of them doing whatever the fuck they want while you're walking on the sidewalk, they're going to not, am I supposed to be with you? Am I supposed to be with you? You know what I mean? Like it's different. Where if we say every time on the sidewalk, this picture, every single time is you next to me, the dog will start defaulting to that picture, which is what we want ultimately.
For sure.
Again, getting back to making these things as easy as possible, the more predictable the picture is, the more easy it is for the dog to fall into the habit of doing said thing when they see that picture. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the walk. So I'm gonna skip around on this list a little bit here.
Okay.
So let's move to guests coming over, because this is another one. Again, getting back to, I did a follow-up session with a client, and this is a follow-up session. The reason why I brought up initially in this podcast episode, like this was all sparked by seeing competitors that offer board and trains and say 2 free follow-up sessions, because like this is a client that's done follow-up sessions, and it's been like 4 or 5 months or something like that since the dog is done training with us, and they just wanted to do a little touch-up. They say, hey, like our dog acted a little, I think it was literally, the dog has been fine, but the dog, we had some company come over the other day, and the dog was just like acting a little funny around them, and we just want to make sure that we're doing everything right.
Yeah.
Logical thing to want to do, right? And I'm happy to help you make sure you're doing things right. So I go there, and same deal. I told them, before I come over, I want you to do everything exactly how you normally would do it when people come over. I said, do not change what you're doing just because I'm coming over the house. And because of that, we saw a couple of things, but one major thing that prior to this we would have never seen before.
Oh.
Right? Okay.
Give it to us.
So I walk in the house, and they put the dog on the bed, which was good. And the dog broke it a couple times, but the dog went back and held the command, right? But one big thing, the e-collar wasn't on the dog.
Oh.
Wasn't on the dog. And they said right off the rip, they said, you said do everything how we normally do. They said, Mac, his name is Mac. They said, Mac, he doesn't wear the e-collar in the house. So we didn't put it on. They were like, we have it right here. It's on the counter. We always put it on for his training sessions, but you said, what do we normally do? And normally it doesn't have the e-collar. And I was like, perfect. Yeah. Thank you, right? Because normally they're coming to a training session, right? Or I'm coming to a training session. So they would have had the e-collar on him because they put the e-collar on when they go to training sessions.
True.
Right? Yeah. But they don't do it when people come over. So this is fine, right? This is fine. I'm not even trying to dig on it, because frankly, even without the e-collar, they had pretty good control of him. Yeah. It was good. You know what I mean? But that's a problem, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. I was like, this is where you get into, and I told him the same thing. Routines, patterns, predictability. I was like, we need to have good routines for how you're handling things. And the situation they had was, he kind of holds the bed when people come over, right? But then he gets a little excited, and then he gets off, and they put him back on. There's no real consequence for it, so we can't settle the mind much.
Right.
And then when they go to release him, they don't really know how to have guests interact with him, right? So I walked him through. This is my routine of what I do 100% of the time people come over my house, right? Okay. I said it starts before the people come in. Put the e-collar goes on. Yeah. Put the e-collar on. Starts before people come in. When people come over, e-collar goes on, right? Yeah. And actually, this gets back to more routines and predictability. E-collar use. Yeah. We'll just touch on this real quick. My routine, I've said it 20 million times. When people come over, when we go off leash anywhere, and when we go anywhere outside of the house, I put the e-collar on my dog forever and ever for the end of time. That one routine alone. Again, if you're not doing that, do that. Follow it to a T, and everything will be so much better than it was before if you're not already doing it.
So much.
Right? So it starts with that. But from there, I'm going to break this down as easy as possible. Okay. This is an easy one, right? And again, follow my words so literally. Yeah. E-collar on the dog before people come over. Mm-hmm. Put the dog onto the bed. Right? Yep. Before people come in, put the dog onto the bed. I could put a caveat on when you should put the dog on the bed. Like a lot of people say, do I put the dog on the bed before people come in, or before people get to the door, or after people get to the door? If you could follow my words literally, what I do, I wait until the person knocks on the door. Then I put my dogs on the bed. Yep. Why do I do it that way? Because I'm creating a pattern that knock means go to your bed.
Yeah.
Knock means go to your bed, right? Can you do it the other way? Yes, but follow my words literally and do it that way, and you'll see further improvement with things.
Okay.
Right? Put the dog on the bed. Again, enforce criteria strictly with the e-collar. Not too difficult, right? From there, 15 to 20 minutes. And when I say 15 to 20 minutes, I don't mean 3 to 5 minutes. I don't mean 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't mean 7 to 10 minutes. I mean 15 to 20 minutes. Set a timer on your phone if you feel like, because some people like really like, they could lose track of time in positive or negative ways. They could like have the dog on there for 3 minutes and be like, yeah, it's been a half an hour.
Yeah.
Right? Or they could have the dog on for, an hour and think it's only been 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Set a timer on your phone, 15 to 20 minutes. I have found 15 to 20 minutes to be the sweet spot for the amount of time it takes for the dog to experience the people being in the house. The initial arousal of the people being in the house come down a little bit. And usually after 15 to 20 minutes, the people have walked around the house a little bit, where the dog has kind of seen them and experienced it and stuff like that.
For sure.
Right? I got to add one more caveat to things too. What I'm about to say is with dogs that are not absolute man eaters. If you have if you have a dog that is going to seriously injure your guests, do not follow this routine. There are separate routines for that.
Yeah.
Right? This is for like the majority of the population.
Yeah.
That has dogs. Right? Maybe a little skittish, a little fearful,
Yeah.
No major risk of bites, but So 15 to 20 minutes, right?
Okay.
At that point, release your dog off the bed. But try your hardest to instruct your guest to just ignore the dog still, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between the dog acclimating to the guest from the bed versus being free to kind of make some choices and go and sniff and this and that. And for some dogs, if they come over, maybe they're a little nervous, they give a little sniff to the person. And as soon as they do that, the person's like, hi.
Yeah.
Not that, again, with these dogs, you're not running the risk of like the dog seriously injuring the person, but it can really spook them and kind of, be counterproductive, if you will, right? So follow that routine. Make sure that you follow that routine to a T, 15 to 20 minutes, and release the dog. And usually for about 5 minutes or so, let the dog explore freely without the need of people kind of bombarding them with space. From there, if your guests want to interact with your dog, you have to have them follow these rules. Now, again, are there some dogs you don't have to follow these rules for? Sure. But even if you have those dogs, if you follow these rules, you're going to avoid so much conflict.
Sure.
If you want to interact with my dog, try to call them over to you loosely, not like, come, because we're basically putting the dog in a position where we're saying, do you want to be interacted with or not? We're not forcing you to come over to the person. So try to call them over to you. Do they come over? If they do, great. Interact with them, pet them. Life's good. Everybody's happy. If they look at you with the side eye and say, I'm comfortable right now, I don't really feel like coming over there, whatever, ignore them. Respect their boundaries. Respect their space. Make sure that they understand you're not going to force these interactions on them. Let me even throw out another trigger word. Let your dog consent to the interaction. This is the one place that I think that is appropriate, because do your guests need to interact with your dog? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not. And getting back to the situation that my clients ran into, because again, they were following this ish, right? Like, I mean, for the most part, they were kind of following this, sans the e-collar, sans 15 to 20 minutes exactly. And they did release the dog and have people ignore it initially, but the place they went wrong is they had a guest come over that they wanted to interact with the dog, and the dog didn't want to interact with them, and they made the poor decision. And I say this like they know this. I told them this as well, right? They made the poor decision of they grabbed the dog. They were like, come here, held him by the collar, and were like, come on over. You could pet him.
Yeah.
They absolutely forced the interaction on the dog. And listen, again, like when it comes to vet visits and grooming and stuff, there are situations you have to force an interaction like that. And there are times we have to train that picture, right? But that's not the situation where we're training that picture. No. If we were going to train that picture, there's a whole nother routine that we would have to implement in order for that to go successfully. Yeah. Right? This is not the situation. No. Right? So that's a routine for guests coming over. I'll outline it one more time for you guys to follow to a fucking T. You ready? E-collar on the dog before people come over. After the person knocks on the door or rings the doorbell, put your dog onto the bed, enforce it strictly. Have your dog hold the bed command for 15 to 20 minutes when people come over the house. Release the dog to be free without people interacting with the dog for roughly 5 minutes. Once you've done that, if people want to interact with the dog, they try to call the dog over to them. If the dog comes over, you could interact. If the dog doesn't come over, that's the dog saying, I don't want you to interact with me right now. Respect those boundaries. And then end on a positive note. That's it. Follow those, and your dog's going to feel comfortable when guests come over the house.
Yeah.
Catch my breath again.
Okay.
Look at this. We're friggin' 30 minutes in already, and we got some good routines cracking here.
Yeah. I think that the last little bit of that, telling your guests like, hey, don't push the issue,
Yeah.
because I know I've got friends that are like, oh, come here, Bender, come, and we'll like just bug him to no end. I'm like, dude, if he doesn't want to come see you, he's not going to come see you.
Yo, you know what's hilarious? I did a video in 2022 on what to do when guests come over your house, and I want to see how close it is. I want to see if I contradict myself at all,
Okay.
because I don't think I do. Here's exactly how you should handle your dog when you have guests come over the house. Step number 1, make sure your dog understands clearly that a doorbell ringing or a knock at the front door is going to predict you putting them onto their bed. By making sure that this is something that you predictably do every single time somebody comes over the house, it helps your dog understand that pattern and that routine and be successful with it long term. Step number 2, make sure that your dog holds that bed stay for roughly 15 minutes once the person comes into the house. Most people make the mistake of only doing it for 1 to 2 minutes, and by the time their dog is released from position, the arousal level is still at a level 11, and we want it to be at a level 5. Having it be for a longer period of time helps the dog relax and gives the dog an opportunity to get acclimated to the new person being in the house and understand that they are not a threat. Step number 3, once you go to release your dog from position, have no expectation of them aside from not jumping on your guest. What this does is it puts the dog in a position where they can move around freely through the house, and if as they're interacting with one of your guests they get uncomfortable, they could walk away, as opposed to putting them in a sit and having people approach them where they're in a position where they're trapped and are going to act more defensive. Okay, so the only difference is really, which those are good caveats to add to it as well, right? A lot of people will do, like other commands or ask the dog to do things, stuff like that. Don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Don't do any of that.
Just let it happen.
Just let it happen,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, and if your dog wants to go away, they can. The only thing I didn't add to that was how people should interact with the dog. And I'll add one more caveat to follow to a T.
Okay.
Because this will tie into the next one we'll talk about, which is socializing with other dogs, right? You, the owner of said dog, should not interact with your dog at all when guests are coming over, aside from setting your boundaries. Right?
Okay.
If you look at it, the point of doing this routine is so your dog can have a good social interaction with new people that are coming over the house. And if you're interacting with them, particularly if your dog is uncomfortable, you're going to basically back that dog up against in a corner, which is you. The corner is you, right? Making the dog more likely to be guardy or reactive or whatever it may be. And every time you're interacting with the dog, you're not observing clearly enough what's happening, their level of comfort, stuff like that. So you're not in a position to set boundaries effectively. So don't do that either.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to the next one here. Socializing with other dogs. This one is really easy, right? And again, I caveat all this with not, like, if you have a super dog aggressive dog, don't, there's other routines and stuff. But these routines, I reiterate, are for people that have good dogs, that want to keep them good, that want to, it's like proactive versus reactive, right? There are reactive things we can do when a dog is misbehaving, and there's proactive things we can do to make sure we don't run into those problems to begin with.
Yeah.
These routines and this predictability is the proactive side of things you could do.
Yep.
Right? To make sure you avoid problems. So you want to socialize your dog with another dog, right? Obviously, you have all the don'ts, right? Don't do it on leash. Don't go to the dog park. I'm going to give you the do's. I'm going to make this clear. If you can't follow these do's, just don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a enclosed area that you could do it in that is not inside of somebody's home? I think inside of the home is just not a great place to be introducing dogs unless you have a fucking mansion where you've got all this space and nothing like breakable around that your dog's playing or going to bump into and stuff. It's not a good idea to do it in your house, right? So do you have a fenced-in backyard, or does the other person have a fenced-in backyard? If not, probably don't do it.
Yeah.
Probably don't do it, right? Again, there's caveats, but just follow these, right? If you do, is the other dog of a social nature? right? So has the dog not ever had any problems with other dogs? If that is the case, great, do it, right? If the dog has had issues with other dogs, don't do it. I would never, there's no reason for me to socialize my dog with another dog that has ever had problems with other dogs.
Right.
Quality over quantity, right? Make sure your dog has good relationships with minimal risk, right? So you got a fence in backyard, have both parties, and the other dog doesn't need to have any training, right? So this routine is not going to be contingent on the other dog having training. It's your job to keep your dog under control, not the other dog under control. And if the dog is a social dog, whether the dog is trained or not, the dog doesn't need to have any training, right? So both of you go into the backyard with both dogs on leashes, right? Other person is standing far enough away from you where the dogs can't get to each other. You're standing over here with your dog on a leash. Put your dog into a command, a sit or a down. Check the box that you could make sure your dog stays completely under control in the presence of another dog, right? Do that for 5 minutes, right? Hang out, let the arousal come down a little bit, right? From there, unclip leashes and release the dogs. Just do it. Just do it, right? There's no alternative. Just do it.
Yeah.
Right? From there, make sure that there's no food toys out, right? So clear the yard of all things that could be perceived as food or toys, and make sure both parties, you and me, are understanding that we are not to be interacting with the dogs at all, right? You're there to lifeguard. You're not there to interact, which is exactly what we talked about with introducing your dog to other people, right? From there, supervise it. Let the social happen. If there's anything you need to correct for, you can correct for. But if you have a social dog you're socializing your dog with, and if your dog is not a man eater, there should be very, very little you need to correct for, right? Let them do their thing. Let them do their thing. Let them do their thing. At the 1 hour mark or sooner, but no longer than 1 hour, end the social. Clip up the dogs, take them out, take your dog home, right? 1 hour is the amount of time where if you're going to check out, you're going to check out after an hour.
Yeah.
Right? And if, like I said, if you feel like you're going to check out sooner than an hour, end it sooner than that, but don't do any longer than an hour.
Okay.
And then that's it. I mean, it really is a pretty easy one. No food, no toys, no affection. Make sure you can gain control of your dog prior to allowing the social to happen. Make sure you have a fenced-in backyard that you could do it in. Don't do it in the home, obviously. Too much breakable shit. Too many areas where a dog can get themselves tucked into a corner or something like that. And then at the 1 hour mark, stop doing it. Right? Yeah. And adding further caveats to things, don't do this at large family gatherings.
Yeah.
Don't do this at large friends gatherings. So barbecues, things like that. Set these socials up exclusively to socialize the dogs.
Yeah.
I'm going to come over to Josh's house with my dog so our dogs can interact. I'm not going there so Josh and I can have some fucking brewskis together and hang out and talk about fucking football.
Yeah.
Right? I'm doing it to allow my dog to have a play date with another dog.
Yeah. Yeah, make it the main priority.
That is the priority. We are there to supervise the dogs. We're there to let the dogs have a good time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't know if I've ever had somebody call me and say, I set up a play date like this, and I followed these rules to a T, and a massive dog fight broke out, and the dogs went to the fucking emergency vet or anything. It's always like, I took my dog to my parents' house for Christmas. We were having a fucking backyard barbecue and this happened, they were out on the leash and on the walk and they went to interact with another dog, It's all of those situations where I see the problems happen. Also, getting back to the walk, we talked about routines for the walk. Obviously, this goes without saying because I didn't tell you to do it. And I said, follow my words to a T, but don't let people or dogs come up to your dog on the walk.
Yes.
Right? It goes without saying it. Like I said, follow my words to a T. If I didn't say it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And if you have questions on, David, you didn't say this, but should I do it? Ask them, and I'll let you know if you should or shouldn't. But default to don't do it if I didn't say it.
Yes.
Right? Okay. What do we got here? Questions on that one?
No, I would just say that. Do you feel like where people mess that up the most would be like the first introduction, like into the yard, or because you said like have the dog dogs just kind of chill for a minute. And I feel like people just kind of like don't give that little like respite.
Yeah, I think probably not having control of your dog prior to allowing the interaction to happen is a big one. Yeah. I think that people interacting with the dogs is the biggest one. And then I think that people doing it too long, so longer than an hour, is probably the third biggest one.
Yeah, that one makes sense too.
I think most people take away the food and toys. Most people, I think, have enough common sense to like think, oh, I'm not going to do that. That seems like something dogs would fight over.
Yeah.
But I think that people aren't aware that affection is the biggest trigger. They go in and the dog's interacting and they're like, hi, puppies. And they're trying to pet them and stuff and it turns into a fight. They catch the other person off guard by just like opening the gate and the other dog comes tearing in and the other person's dog is still on a leash and a fight breaks out, something like that. And then I think that a lot of people will go over for like 5 hours for a fucking barbecue or something. And after, the first hour goes well and then after that they're distracted and a piece of food drops on the ground and, whatever. Something happens from there. So I think it's all of those things.
Heard that.
All right, feeding. Let's get to feeding here.
Okay.
I'm going to try to keep this one quick. I've got videos on this. This one, just go on our YouTube channel and just like search feeding routine or how I feed my personal dogs or something, and you'll find a video of me doing this, right? Let's pretend you have one dog, but I do this with all 4 of my dogs, right? No commands are ever used in the feeding process, right? No waits, no sits, no downs, no anything like that, right? So here's what I do. Got my food bowl. First and foremost, I take the food bowl, I go to scoop the food out of the food bin and put it in the bowl, and as I'm doing that, without giving any commands, if my dog bombards over and tries to jam their face in that food bowl, I'm correcting them for that.
Yeah.
My whole philosophy on feeding is food is mine until I give it to you. It's mine until I tell you it's yours, regardless of what I tell you, right? So scoop it into the food bowl. If they go for it right off the rip, tell them no and give them a correction for it. Do not give a command. Do not give a command. Do not give a command. I tell people to do this, and still they go and they put the dog in a fucking sit.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Correct your dog for going for the food, right? Set the food bowl down on the ground. Still, at this point, the dog should not be going for the food because you have not given it to them yet. If they go for that food, tell them no and correct them again. Again, this is how you prevent resource guarding, right? Yeah. You're claiming the food from the dog. You're proactively doing it before you ever see a problem with it.
Yep.
Right? Once that is established, once the dog is waiting, tell them okay, let them go eat the food, and then just wait. Wait as long as you fucking want to. Like literally, like wait until the dog is completely disengaged from the food bowl. Even if they sit there and lick the fucking empty bowl for 20 minutes after, sit there and wait and let them do it. Okay. While you are doing this, do not touch the dog. Do not touch the dog. Do not touch the dog. Do not touch the dog.
Yeah.
You've done the hard work by claiming the food already. The dog knows the food is yours. Leave the dog alone while they're eating.
Yeah.
Stay with the dog while they're eating, but leave them alone while they're eating. The dog will get comfortable and used to you being right next to them while they're eating. They will get used to you not being a threat to them while they're eating. And still, they will be, engaged with the food and then realize that when they're done, they can disengage from the food. When they're done and disengage from the food, pick up the bowl, put it away, you're done.
Yep.
That's it. That's your proactive thing. And even with dogs, I'm not like telling everybody, go do this with all your fucking resource guarding dogs and, ones that are going to try to seriously hurt you and this and that. But like we rehab massive dogs, massive resource guarding dogs by enforcing this procedure because almost 100% of dogs that resource guard, one of two things will happen. One is they think that food is theirs prior to the feeding ever starting. And they're so adamant on trying to get to that food before you tell them to. And that is where you set that tone and say, absolutely not. This is my food right now.
Yeah.
Right. From there, once you put the bowl down and let them go to eat, if you're standing right next to that bowl, a lot of these dogs that are resource guarding won't even eat the food next to you. You just got to sit there and wait until they get comfortable enough of you're not going away and I'm stuck either eating this food next to this person or not eating this food next to this person. And obviously there's more caveats to it, but as a general rule, that is the routine for it, of how we rehab dogs. But again, if you have a dog that needs rehabbing with this, you got to consult us for like formal information on how to work through it. But that's really how you do it.
Yeah. But once you give them the food, it's their food.
It's their food.
Yeah.
I gave it to you. Eat it. I don't play the out game or anything like that
Yeah.
where I release them from the food like 27 times. If anything, I think that creates more problems.
Yeah.
If anything, I think that creates more stress surrounding food and confirms that you are a threat to an extent.
Yeah.
Again, there's caveats to all of this.
For sure.
Should you be able to out your dog off of food if need be? Yeah. I want to know if I need to get my dog to disengage from it that I can, but do I ever really need to do that? No.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, literally, I cannot even remember a time when I've ever needed to call my dog off of their food bowl. I know I could. Like I said, that's just a command issue. That's just is your come command good enough to be proofed around a food bowl or not?
Right.
But that's the routine.
Yep.
Questions on that one?
No, I think that's the most straightforward one you could do.
I'll recap it, right? No commands. Scoop your food into the bowl. As you're scooping the food into the bowl, if the dog sticks their face in it, tell them no, give them a correction. Set the bowl down. Still no commands. If the dog sticks their head in the bowl, give them a correction for it. Once the dog is waiting, not because you put them in a sit or a down or told them wait or anything like that, because they know they can't go for that food, tell them okay, let them go to it, stand right next to them, but do not interact with them. Once the dog fully disengages from the bowl on their own, not because you called them away from it, not because you told them out, just because they're done with it. They've licked the bowl clean. They're no longer interested in it. Pick the bowl up, put it away. And I will add one last caveat. I just said it, but I'll reiterate the importance of pick the bowl up and put it away. Don't leave it out. A lot of people leave the bowl right next to the water bowl until the next feeding routine. Do not do that. The bowl comes out when you go to give it to the dog. It's not something that's freely there all the time. And if you have a dog that is not food motivated enough to follow this routine, they free feed, go to our website, read the blog on building food drive with your dog, and follow that blog to a T, literally verbatim. We write these things out because we want you to follow them verbatim, not because we want you to add your ish to it.
Yeah.
Right? So do that. Fix your feeding problem because your dog should not be a free feeder. It's not good for them. All dogs have food drive. You just have to learn how to get it out of them. Do that and you'll be fine.
Don't add your ish.
Don't add your ish to it. That's it. I'm not going to go over toys and play games because that one, I got to think on that one a little bit more on how I want to word that one. Maybe we'll go over that one next time.
Okay. Sounds
That's
good.
it. We got to go. I got to go to work. Not that this isn't work, but I got to go do actual work. This was long enough. If you have any questions on it, let me know. Follow these things to a T and you'll have a better relationship with your dog. All right. Bye.